What is your biggest motivation in life? Do you believe in the human potential for overcoming adversity and aiming for the stars? Do you believe networking is more important than competence? Hello everyone, and welcome to another brand new episode on my channel, Wonder Boho Book Club. Today I'll be discussing the book, Hillbilly Elegy, written by J.D. Vance. James David Vance is an American conservative commentator, politician, venture capitalist, and author. Hillbilly Elegy is a passionate and personal analysis of a culture in crisis, that of white working-class Americans. Through this book, J.D. Vance tells the true story of what a social, regional, and class decline feels like when you were born with it hung around your neck. From the perspective of a former hillbilly who became a successful entrepreneur, this book tells a classic American dream story. It shows how, with frequent family fights, financial difficulties, and an ever-changing cast of father figures as his backdrop, J.D. Vance still managed to succeed, first in the Marine Corps and then in a leading Silicon Valley investment firm. A deeply moving memoir with its share of humor and vividly colorful figures, Hillbilly Elegy is the story of how upward mobility really feels, and it's an urgent and troubling meditation on the loss of the American dream for a large segment of this country. Before moving ahead, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Part 1. Mamaw and Papaw. One of the biggest motivators in human life is ambition or aspiration, and the American dream is the highest embodiment of human aspiration. Often portrayed as a story of overcoming adversity, rising above one's circumstances, and achieving one's highest aspirations, living the American dream means proving to the world that anything is possible, even in the face of enormous odds. Hillbilly by birth, J.D. Vance grew up in a steel town in Ohio that had lost both its employment and its future aspirations. Vance belonged to the poor white Americans' working class, where poverty was an heirloom passed down from generation to generation. Here, Vance gives a detailed picture of his family as well as his childhood surroundings and circumstances. He starts with the lives of his grandparents, who were hillbillies too, and were an example of the typical state the society was in at that time. Referred to affectionately as Mamaw and Papaw, Vance's grandparents were born in the 1930s in Jackson, Kentucky. As they lived in the Appalachian Mountains, they were sometimes referred to as hillbillies or hill people, although the term became derogatory over time. After moving from Kentucky to Ohio, Papaw was hired by Armco, a major steel company. In fact, J.D.'s grandparents were among the thousands of Kentuckians recruited by Armco in the 1950s. Thanks to industrial work, Vance's grandparents were able to retire comfortably middle class. However, things have changed for the worse in recent years as poverty has wreaked havoc on communities like Jackson, Kentucky. In fact, half of Jackson's youngsters are living below the poverty line. The situation has become so appalling that the state has taken over the supervision of the public schools. Nonetheless, local parents have little option but to enroll their children in high schools that send just a small percentage of their pupils to university. The overall health of the residents of Jackson has deteriorated over the years. A 2009 ABC program on Appalachia revealed that young children suffer from severe dental issues, frequently induced by excessive intake of sugary soft beverages. Appalachian poverty is not unique to Jackson. It's a problem that affects many towns and communities in the area that have been decimated by the outsourcing of employment. In this book, Vance takes us through the various phases of how the Appalachian hillbillies' personal lives were influenced by this industrial change. Part 2. Born and raised in poverty. Bev, Vance's mother, was born into a dysfunctional family that was perpetually teetering on the brink of collapse. When Bev was only a few years old, her father's alcoholism had grown out of hand. One Christmas Eve, after a night of drinking, Papaw arrived home and demanded a freshly prepared Christmas supper. When Mamaw was unable to do as he said, he became so enraged that he threw the family's Christmas tree out the back door. In another instance, Mamaw threatened to murder Papaw if he ever returned home drunk again. This was after one of Papaw's especially violent nights of drinking. Paying no heed to her words, Papaw came home inebriated again a week later. Staying true to her words, Mamaw grabbed a container of gasoline, doused him in it, and set him on fire. Despite his miraculous survival with just minor burns, there were repeated fights and quarrels in the house, and Vance's mother suffered much as a result. Born in 1984, Vance was reared in the impoverished Middletown, Ohio. Meanwhile, Armco, the steel mill that had provided employment to Vance's grandparents and thousands of others, was in the process of shutting down. Armco was following the policy of outsourcing, which meant that a large chunk of American industrial jobs were being sent to Asia to save labor costs, leading the city to sink further into poverty. As the city spiraled down into economic crisis, there was nowhere else for white working-class residents to go, as their houses' value dropped, trapping them in ever worse areas. Vance says that Middletown is still in the midst of a financial crisis. Many small companies in the area have closed their doors, while others are struggling to stay afloat. Part 3. Childhood Woes. Vance's parents divorced while he was a toddler. He became estranged from his father and was eventually adopted by his mother's new partner, Bob. His mother received her nursing license at the same time. Despite the fact that she had never attended college, she had a strong desire to further her education. In general, Vance's household was a happy one because of his mother's constant encouragement for reading books. However, by the time Vance turned 9, conflicts and violence had become the norm in his household. Upon relocating to Preble County with his mum and Bob, the fights intensified, often keeping him awake at night. As a result, Vance's grades at school began suffering and his health took a hit as well. To make matters worse, Vance's mother tried to commit suicide by deliberately crashing her minivan after she was confronted about her extramarital affair. This prompted Vance and his mother to return to Middletown, which by then had become a drug and alcohol haven. This depressing environment affected Vance's mother adversely, as she was already an alcoholic. Once, she decided to take Vance to the mall to purchase him football cards as an apology for her drinking. However, she lost her mind on the way and threatened to kill them both by crashing the car. In the end, she didn't rig the vehicle, but she did give Vance a good thumping instead. The situation went so bad that the cops had to ultimately come and handcuff her. Around this time, Vance's biological father came back into the picture. Having become a devout Christian, he instilled a newborn respect in Vance about himself and the church. To listen to more interesting summaries, please subscribe to my channel. Part 4. A Rolling Stone. As his mother's boyfriends changed regularly, Vance had a rotating cast of father figures throughout his life. However, Papaw, his grandpa, was always a constant presence in his life. In spite of Papaw's own lack of regard for women, he taught him to respect women and to do maths. Papaw played a very important role in Vance's ever-changing, unpredictable life. So, not surprisingly, the death of Papaw when Vance was 13 years old devastated both the youngster and his mother. His mother was ultimately sent to a mental facility when she was trying to come to terms with the death of her father. In fact, Bev's behavior was deteriorating rapidly, mainly as a coping mechanism for the loss of her father. She was ultimately fired from her job at the hospital, and she tried to kill herself again not long after that, this time by slitting her wrists. She was then taken to a mental facility and enrolled in a rehabilitation program. All this led to Vance living with his Mamaw during his teenage years. However, the tranquility he discovered in Mamaw's house would not endure. His mother remarried and brought Vance to live with her new husband, a guy called Ken. This nomadic life took its toll on Vance, and he went into depression and almost dropped out of high school. Part 5. Sheltered by Mamaw. Fortunately for Vance, his mother's tryst with Ken was short-lived. As a result of their breakup, Vance returned to live with Mamaw. The next 3 years of his life proved to be a game-changer. While living with Mamaw, Vance had to fulfill 3 criteria set by her: do well in school, get a job, and lend a hand to her. Vance acquiesced without complaint when she applied the rules with rigor. Because of his grandmother's help, he was able to gain a lot of knowledge during this time, as well as excel academically. His grandmother, for example, paid $180 to purchase him a graphing calculator when he started taking advanced maths courses, educating him about her values and forcing him to commit to his study. Vance was finally content and having a great time, thanks to Mamaw's tight regulations. His grades began to rise as well as he began to get his life back on track. Moreover, Mamaw's home was more than just a temporary shelter from the outside world. It provided him with a hope for a brighter future. He eventually aced the SAT, which further increased his self-confidence. At this juncture, Vance was utterly confused about what career he should choose. Not knowing better, he chose to join the Marines. After serving in the military for 4 years, he was transformed into a new man. He learned to become self-sufficient, take care of his physical fitness, personal cleanliness, and also learned to save and invest for the future. He also realized that a good leader earns the respect of others by being kind and listening to others. Part 6. Becoming aware to one's uniqueness. While Vance was in the Marines, his Mamaw passed away. Vance honored all the efforts Mamaw had put into educating him, and he enrolled at Ohio State University in 2007, owing in great part to her encouragement. Serving in the Marines had brought about a great change in his personality. It had bolstered his self-confidence to a level where he had begun to believe that anything was possible only if he tried hard. It had also imbued a strong sense of optimism in him. As a result of all this, he earned a double major, summa cum laude, from Ohio State University in only 2 years. His next aim was to get into a prestigious law school. His hard work and perseverance got him what he wanted. He was accepted at Yale University in 2010 to study law. He was overwhelmed by the start of this new chapter in his life, as Yale made him re-evaluate his ideas of who he was. While growing up in the suburbs, there was not a single Ivy League graduate in his immediate circle of acquaintances. Among his immediate and extended families, he was the only one to go to college and then professional school. Vance made remarkable progress at Yale. His grades were good throughout, and he also got the chance to work for the top counsel at a U.S. Senator's office. Notwithstanding all this, he was painfully aware of the fact that he was one of the poorest students in the school and that his background was vastly different from those of his classmates. Part 7. A lesson to learn. Vance's time in Yale was made somewhat easier when he started dating Usha, a fellow student. He soon realized that Ivy League schools like Yale thrive on social capital. Social capital is a term economists use to describe the networks of people and institutions that humans use to their economic advantage. Networking is the most basic aspect of life in places like Yale. Contrary to ordinary graduates, Ivy League graduates don't send out resumes because they know people through their social capital. Therefore, they may simply email a friend or relative or just make a phone call and be certain of a job or at the very least an interview. In order to get an interview with an influential federal judge, Vance too had to rely on his professor's support. Thanks to his newfound social capital, Vance was thus able to extricate himself out of the vicious cycle of generational poverty. A lot of studies have shown that adverse childhood experiences like Vance's may lead children to do badly in school and subsequently suffer from anxiety, melancholy, obesity, and even heart disease. Vance, however, chose to beat the odds, staying true to his dreams in the face of adversity, thus making his Mamaw and Papaw proud. Conclusion. Life is full of trials and tribulations. We all face failure and rejection at some point in our lives. Also, family plays a very important role in shaping our early years. We can all learn something from Vance's life. In spite of being born in a city replete with drug addicts and growing up in a family riddled with financial, marital, and relational crisis, Vance persevered in his dream to educate himself and get out of his miserable existence. Although the odds were against him, he never gave up and was rewarded with a successful and happy life. This proves that being born a hillbilly does not necessarily mean that there is no way out of that life. Other hillbillies can take inspiration from Vance and transform their lives too. Thank you for watching this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe. Your comments, likes, and shares are highly appreciated. See you soon in our next episode.